Welcome back to the Gobcast. Today we're going to talk about happy accidents when we do a deep dive on the Alchemist Swig. So I'm going to try to be concise today, which is a challenge. As you know, I like to talk, especially when we're talking about something I really like. And since today we're talking about one of my favorite goblins, the best of the best, we're talking about the Alchemist Swig, the phenomenon that's been taking over the internet for the past few months. Partially my fault, and you're welcome. I'm gonna try to be concise, but already I can tell this is just gonna be about fun. And again, the idea I want to put forth is that we're talking about kind of that Bob Ross idea of happy accidents. You're gonna see that come up time and time again. We're gonna dive into the figure of Swig, the lore of Swig, and then toward the end, if I don't go way too far over my goal of time, we're going to talk about the 1,000 Swiggs at LegionsCon, which is going to be something really cool, really special, and an invitation for you to be a part of it. Before I start talking about Swig himself, I want to talk about how we got Swig. Because if you just go on the website and you look, you might see that Swig is part of All Stars 5+. That doesn't tell the story. That if you've been around, and maybe if you're like me, this is your wheelhouse. There's just from the inception of Swig, there's a story there that is just so perfect for this character. So in All Stars 5, and if you're not familiar with Mythic Legions and the All Stars voting, the company Four Horsemen Studios puts out a list of different figures that we as the fans can vote on and voice our opinion of who we'd like to see reissued. Some of these older figures that have gone up in the aftermarket, that they're not as available to newer collectors, the studio says, okay, let's run it again. They didn't do that this year. They did something else, which again we'll come back to, which is interesting. But what they did with All Stars 5+ is that they gave us a list, and in that list we had 2 goblins. So I mean, that's kind of how it ties into us. But we had Gonks and Nubnik. Not the most popular goblins. There were some other ones that even we were kind of like, well, where's King Noglin? Where's Snag? Where are the big boys? Gonks and Nubnik, they didn't do so well. So what the studio did at this point is they wanted to have a good mix. So after all the voting and everything, they said, and they revealed the whole wave, they told us that there would be a goblin in All Stars 5+. Because goblins were not represented, we haven't had a goblin. The goblin didn't win the vote. So this time they said, okay, here's your goblin. It's Swig. He's kind of like a consolation prize in some senses, that he would be kind of new to us. Most of the All-Stars wave tends to be things, or had been things, that had been parts reused, reissuing whole characters. So just drawing from other things, so it was just to be kind of an easy wave for the studio to put out some new stuff, some old stuff, just really keep things alive. And it's very cool, it's very different. But that's an aside. So when we got Swig, some people even reacted like he's just a consolation prize, but he has a new head. It was revealed that really during the second Kickstarter, Eric just had so much fun making goblins, he made several more goblins that we hadn't seen yet. Goblins that would come out over time. 3 in particular. One of them being Swig. So these heads were sculpted and tooled well ahead of time. They were ready and waiting. So this was just an opportunity, a happy accident, if you will, that we didn't have a goblin in the wave. And so they said, hey, let's put one in there. And let's take this opportunity to do something new and different. Let's put in Swig. And so we get Swig in All Stars 5+. So that's more of that context that, okay, we didn't win, but boy did we win. We won really big by getting a great new figure. The secret origin of Swig already tells you There's something a little off, but it keeps being really cool. It keeps winning out. The birth of Swig is something special that, again, just sets the pattern for everything we're going to talk about today. So let's talk about Swig as a character. If you just look through his bio, you can see he's like all the other cave goblins. He's in the Legion of Arethyr. He's a bad goblin. He's in there with King Noglin. But his bio itself reveals a whole lot more going on. I think one of the first points that I always like about it is it's a comment about goblins as a whole. It even says that King Noglin has these aspirations to do more. If you read it, it says that goblins are the smallest and least powerful of the impure, a fact which has long bothered King Noglin. He wants to make the goblin army more important. Swig is part of that effort. Some of the comments I made in the introduction to goblins in Mythic Legions is about the goblins. To me, are all about this story of getting your identity and asserting yourself and saying, I'm here, see me, I'm capable, I have value, something that, I mean, we still struggle with today. But the goblins are the voice for that identity. The tradition is the goblins are puny and weak and worthless. The Swig's bio jumps right into this idea that this is about goblin empowerment, and that's a fun message. So we take this idea, like that's a statement which even is beyond Swig, but it kind of adds to the idea of why Swig is so cool in the world of Mythos and what he means, because he's the chief alchemist to the king. He makes these potions, and it's interesting because how successful is Swig? Swig is the chief alchemist. He's the best there is at what he does. But what's interesting is it mentions some of the different things: strength, potion, or strength, impenetrable skin, the ability to fly, to turn invisible. Those are some of the concepts for Swig. That he's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this potion. But it doesn't always work out. And it says that there's a failing to him. That's one detail that I love about Swig in particular. You have this great epic story with Mythic Legions. You have these heroes and villains that are just beyond anything, right? You have these ones that can control forces of nature. You can just wild and powerful and heroic and everything grand. And then in Swig, you have someone who's trying to be good and at what he does, and he's fallible, he's failing. He has times where he tries and he does not succeed. You generally don't read about that in these historic or these epic fictions. You know, you have these ideas that they go out and they fight the bad guy and they win, or the bad guys, you know, pull off their schemes. Swig is, he's trying real hard, but not always successful. That's not to say he's never successful. The other part of his bio points out that while he tries these things, the results are unintended. So while he might try to give someone rock hard skin, maybe they just turn into a rock. That we have all sorts of different ideas about, okay, maybe someone is supposed to be invisible or fly as one of the things in the bio. Well, you know, what can flying mean? Can it mean turning, that they can levitate, that they can move through the air? Or does it mean that they have wings? Okay, so maybe it would give them wings in an unexpected way. Maybe instead of giving them nice, pretty bat wings or bird wings, gives them very insect-like wings and turns them into some kind of goblin mosquito type of thing. There's so many ways in which there's a recipe for success I'll joke about later, but you can, the world of Swig is to open up all these other wild and crazy ideas. Success or failure, things are going to turn out really interesting and fun. So just to reiterate this point, you have the idea that Swig is part of one of many goblins that's trying to succeed and not necessarily getting the results he wants. I think there's a great maybe little hint at the community, the Goblins community, us in the Malignancy. We try real hard, but we tend to be overshadowed. You know, some things just don't land how we hope. But we keep growing and we keep having fun doing it. So in the end, that's what matters. Swig is kind of like all of us, really, that things don't always go as planned. But can we take those accidents and turn them into something else? I also really like this idea that Swig kind of introduces science into the world of Mythos, that we have all this magic and fantasy, we have these powerful beings, but here Swig is, because they're not strong, because they're not, you know, the most magical of races or whatever, that Swig is saying that the goblins are using science and technology, knowledge, to try to get their identity. That's just a cool idea to me. That in this world of might and magic, that the goblins of all the races are the ones who are focused on science and maybe trying different ways of approaching things. I know alchemy supposedly has some basis in kind of the fantasy alchemy being mystical and magical, and there's some of that represented here, but I like the idea that Swig is really also on that mad scientist level, that he's trying to create things. He's trying to use knowledge and his potions to do basically give people superpowers. So again, that's almost bending the genre a little bit, and it gives a fun little added level that the goblins in Mythic Legions are not just going to rely on, you know, the magic of the world. They're going to do it for themselves. They're going to learn science. They're going to do things their way. So I think that's kind of a cool little nod that they're going to use their intellect. They're going to be something different. They're going to form their own identity using alchemy and who knows what other sciences. That said, I also like that Swig is different in that he's not really a combatant. He's not a soldier or a commander. He's not someone out on the front lines fighting. In fact, his bio even mentions the effect of him being in his little cave, in his office, working away, that in his lab. So he's not one that you, in your ranks of, you know, all the Mythic Legions and the beautiful displays that people make, you're not going to see Swig out there leading the charge. He's in the back. He's working on his potions. I can relate to that. I think that's how I work as well. I'd rather be in the back. I don't really feel like I want to be seen most of the time. So maybe that's you too. Maybe that's part of why I take to Swig so personally, is just that idea of, yeah, he wants to contribute. He's helping to fight for the goblin identity, but his way of doing things isn't on the front lines. He's not necessarily a fighter or a combatant. Something different. We only have one other one, that Krotos, the satyr, he's kind of even marked as a healer or pacifist. And I think those are the only two that I really can think of where they're not like, yeah, we're going to go fight, we're going to go kill, we're going to go do all this. They're really two of the more unique ones in all of Mythic Legions that are just saying, hey, fighting's not our thing. Use the pun, I like the idea of Swig being a catalyst for future kind of figures and sets that might not work otherwise. This year at LegionsCon, we have the Amazing Alien and Creature Creator 2-pack for Cosmic Legions, where you have a lot of different parts, that the whole point is a big set that you can mix and match and do all sorts of crazy stuff with. I really like the idea that in Swig's bio it opens up canonically this idea of Swig's failures also being really cool figures. That, you know, maybe one of them even says stretchy limbs. So we can take those compatible limbs that wouldn't normally fit. Why can't we just get a pack with those extra long limbs and a goblin, and then this Swig's potion? Every time you have something that wouldn't normally fit, you could kind of make it green and make it into goblinized and throw it in a pack, and you could have just a wild set, and that kind of just tears the doors off of what you could actually do. Some of the things with the armory experience, where you could even just mix and match different sets. Something like that in Mythic Legions with just weird random parts that kind of are painted to fit together that can fit a certain theme. I've got some examples I'll show that even like what if you just took all the different kind of animal related parts and you made them green so they obviously came from a goblin or they kind of read as goblin like. Take all those parts, put them together in like just a super pack. You couldn't do this with just all the different colors. Like what would drive it? Well, it's one of Swig's experiments. Things have gone haywire and now someone has gotten all these different animal properties to them. Boom, there you go. Or even just other features. You know, why you want a really big and strong goblin. Something that we don't really have, like say you want like an ogre-sized goblin. Swig's potions. If you have, you know, just some kind of off the wall, something that doesn't work normally, us, you know, kind of some kind of weird goblin skeleton vampire, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like anything you do, you can probably say, one of Swig's potions got him again. So I do like this idea that it really kind of tears off a little bit of that barrier that would say like, yeah, you can't, how could you really do that? It's real easy now to just say Swig's potions, anything is possible. That's a great fun little way to interpret some of the details and nuances of this bio. I'm gonna leave the bio aside for a second. We'll come back because again, Swig is just a character. He has all these things that are implied in his bio, not just like, you know, hammered in this is how his personality is, but you interpret it because of different elements that we can project onto and we can say, okay, I kind of understand this. Someone who's tried and not had success, someone who's really fighting for the identity, that they want to support the cause. Like Swig is not against the king here, and the goblins are not necessarily trying to overthrow Arethyr. They just want to be themselves. And all these ideas come together in Swig, that he's a scientist, something, and he's just so different from everybody else. And so that's what I mean, like when we come to this idea of like these things being some kind of a series of happy accidents. A lot of these pieces are familiar, but when they come together in one, it's fantastic. Swig is just really special, and I can never stress that enough. And we'll see this come up both in the figure that I'll talk about now, and when we go into what we're talking about and getting excited for at LegionsCon 2024, the Night of 1,000 Swigs. But first, let's talk about the figure. Just took the figure itself. You could very easily just say, this is just another goblin, the basic Goblin 2.0 buck with a new head and a little bit of soft goods. That's one way to look at it. And I honestly think a lot of people, when they first got Swig in hand, that was the reception. Not someone that, this is a really cool fig, but just generally like, it's just kind of more of the same. But in those details, we have so much going on that this guy really, again, the more you look at it, the more you see things that shouldn't work together do, and it's fantastic. I mean, just going from the top down, Swig has what in Mythic Legions is a 1.0 size head. So he's got kind of a bigger neck peg. So that actually doesn't fit with his body. His head kind of fits more with just the bigger size figures, like normal human size figures. Even his hands are 1.0 or the larger hands. So his head and his hands are actually kind of a little enlarged, giving him a really cool look, a little exaggerated, a little bit more cartoony or caricature. He also has two of those really cool pauldrons that are a bit longer, a bit bigger. Again, those are ones that are usually found on 1.0. They're very big on the 2.0 body, on the goblin body. This is something we saw similarly in Thump, that the bigger one just really changes the look. He has just a great brown and copper color scheme going on, topped off with that bright silver skirting piece and loincloth there. So he's got all these little, and it just pops. Like it's purple, so it kind of goes with his purple hood, but it's all metallic, so it's very fantastic as well, and it's very attractive, or I want to say llamativo. That's like something to call your attention to, but that's a Spanish word. So the whole idea is you have some interesting interplay going on with just the figure itself. You could just read it as these parts shouldn't work together. He shouldn't have a 1.0 head with 1.0 hands with 1.0 pauldrons on a basic goblin body, and then this weird kind of mismatched, kind of matched colored skirt. Those things don't all work together. The ingredients of the potion that is Swig shouldn't work. But then you just look at him. He's got this grin. He's got like a stubby face. He doesn't have the exact same right face for the goblins. His nose is very different. He's got a crooked smile. Honestly, he makes people smile. I like that about him. He's just smiling back at you. Is it sinister? Is it happy? Is it both? He just has that great kind of look of like, I'm doing something. Maybe I know. Maybe he's grinning through like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. All of that. He's got personality. And again, we see he's taking all these little parts that shouldn't work together. They come together, and the results are maybe not as intended, but he totally fits. He reads as something really special because there's just enough of those little details. Having a cloth hood instead of being all armored, having the browns and the leather type paint job, even with the copper. This isn't just, he's not just a soldier. You can read that just looking at him like, okay, you might just go, oh, he's kind of a goblin wizard. But you kind of read too that just some of the mismatched sizes and things, there's more going on. Again, that's the theme. That's what Swig is all about. There's so much more going on than things seem to be at first. I really like Swig's accessories are kind of different too. He does come with a sword, which you'd kind of think of for fighting, but his sword and his axe are really more like tools, kind of a hatchet, or a machete even, or is this type of sword he has. So it's interesting to me that he comes with two weapons that are really more tools. He has this big staff, which is really pretty with a little blue knob on top. Again, kind of fitting like, okay, he's kind of a wizard spellcaster, but it's so big for him. It really reads almost as much as a walking stick or something to help him get around or get attention, even more so than anything he'd use for. He doesn't cast spells. He's an alchemist. He doesn't need it. So some of it's even for show. This kind of like his equivalent of a pimp cane or something, just to show off his prestige and prominence, that he walks around with this great big stick to say, hey, I'm Noglin's chief alchemist. He's not without pride. He also comes with a small dagger. That's probably the closest thing you could really see him using as an actual weapon. But again, he's not one who's out on the front lines. He's not an assassin. So this idea of him just being hidden away, according to his bio, in his lab making potions, he probably uses that more to cut things up, to cut up his materials. Again, he's not a fighter. He's not one who's running around and killing people left and right or doing all this other stuff. In my display on my desk, he has a desk. He's sitting there working away right alongside me. That's, again, what Swig is about. He's going to make potions. He's going to invent. He's going to make mistakes. So those other things are tools of the trade rather than weapons of war. I love the Swig figure. I just love to play with him. He's again, this idea that he's more than the sum of his parts. He's one who's just got so much going on for him, so much personality, that going just beyond this idea that he's just kind of basic, he's smaller, he doesn't matter. That's all about to change because of, again, some happy accidents that have resulted in a community effort to bring together 1,000 Swigs. So the figure, if you don't have it, you need it in your collection. I will say that outright. He is just one of the most fun figures because it is just fun and it's different. And all the little pieces that don't add up make it something that stands out. Again, probably not something you're going to have on your front line, But if you need it for any other scene and you want a goblin in there, he just fits everything perfectly. So let's talk about the happy accident of 2024. Swig came from All Stars. 2 years later, we're here in 2024 and we're all getting hyped up for the All Stars vote this year. And then we find out All Stars is going to have to wait. We're getting something different this year called the Mysteries of Mythos. Kind of a blind box thing that picks up on some of the ideas of All Stars. Some of the older figures are going to be brought back. We even found out that some of them were being reprinted, which was great, including Snag and Gonks. So they're coming back. You'll buy 2 figures, no extra cost. It's just the price of 2 figures. Only you won't know what you're getting. Easy enough concept, kind of blind box, mixed reaction in the community, but generally favorable. What happens is, and this is again kind of the happy accident, the story inside things, as I understand it, I could be wrong, that as people start getting their packages in, people start noticing they get a lot of Swiggs. And he came out with All Stars 5, so this was like 2 years ago that it came out-ish. So fairly recently, less than 2 years, I should say. But people are getting a lot of Swiggs. Some people are complaining. I was buying them on the cheap because people just wanted to get rid of them and they would regret that. So people are getting a lot of Swiggs. There starts to be a running joke in the community that, Swig got into his potions and now there's a bunch of extra Swiggs. That idea kind of was around a little bit, but then our director of sales and marketing at Four Horsemen, Jeremy Gerard, wrote a whole story picking up on this kind of joke about how everybody's getting Swiggs, and wrote The Tale of 1,000 Swiggs, in which it was now semi-canonized of Swig having created a potion. And it's a great story. I'll link to it. That he created a potion. The idea was to multiply the strength. And what it did is it multiplied the Swiggs. And so now all of these Swiggs go out into the world. So now it's a fun play on the happy accident of everybody getting more Swiggs. Jeremy later said that even part of that was because there was a wrong number somewhere, so extra Swiggs, more than were intended, were ordered. There were, again, a happy accident coming about, so now everybody's getting all of the fruitage of that accident, more Swiggs. But now you have this story about 1,000 Swiggs. Some of us in the community picked up on it and started having fun with that, a little joke. And then we even have one of my co-conspirators with the kind of the one who's chiefly pushing for what would be this event that we're now talking about, is getting together those 1,000 Swiggs, bring them home. Let's have them at LegionsCon. Can we do this? Could we bring 1,000 Swiggs together? There's well more than 1,000 out there, but at one event, one day, one time, can the Swiggs come home? The interest in this event starts building. We start talking about it. We start making a couple memes. We start seeing things really start to come together. And now the studio has picked up on this event to bring together 1,000 Swiggs on Sunday, November 10th. It's an official event. The community is doing this. We're bringing together a Swig. But why is this such a cool event? If we just brought together 1,000 stock Swiggs, that would be pretty impressive in and of itself. But the story that we've kind of been encouraging people to do in the Mythic Legions Cabal, in the Malignancy, we've been telling this idea of, well, those Swiggs went out into the world. What journey did they experience? What potions did they drink along the way? Did they try some new experiment and they're bringing it home? How have they been changed? A little element of the real world. What has the Swig that you got been through? How has it been in your collection? How have you customized it? How have you changed it to fit you? So now the Swiggs are kind of walking a fun line of almost like art toy, that they're representing the collector or the artist. And those are what's coming back. They're not coming back the same as they left. They're coming back changed and different. That's to say, the impact that this toy line and this series and that story has on all of us as collectors as well. This is what's bringing us all together. So that's, to me, my take on what the Night of 1,000 Swigs, it'll be and during the morning on Sunday, so it's not really a night. But we're encouraging you, especially if you're watching this and you have a Swig, bring it as it is. Bring it how you've made it. Customize it. If you've never customized before, take a chance. Say, what would you do a little bit differently? What journey has your Swig been on? I've seen people do some really cool stuff of like even their local team colors. You know, their favorite sports team or their college or whatever. Something that's your little personal touch on Swig. Bring that with you to LegionsCon. And then we're going to get those 1,000 Swigs and we're going to take a photo and we're going to take the names and we're going to be part of history. I think that's a great kind of conclusion to all these happy accidents. Is it just bringing all the community closer together? It's having people try new things. Maybe things will succeed, maybe they won't. But we're having fun. So I think that's just an awesome story in and of itself. So after we get done with this, there'll be an addendum somewhere down the road to this video. The deeper dive into Swig is the impact he's had on the Mythic Legions community. How he's gone out and brought us all back together. I like the idea, too, that this might be the precedent for other gatherings of this sort in future years. So that time and time again, we're just going to see how this toy line, again, these figures go out into the world, but then they're ours. We make our changes to them. They become part of our collection. And then at an event like LegionsCon, we come back together. So I think that's a really cool story in and of itself. And really, it's a beautiful thing that this guy, that the result of so many failures or errors or accidents, he gets to be the catalyst for something so unique and special. So if you haven't already, get yourself a Swig. You deserve it, and it's a great figure. If you're going to LegionsCon, bring your Swig. Let it tell your story through a single figure of its journey, of your journey. And I think that's going to be something really special. So that's, I feel like I've left so much out. I could talk so much more about how much fun it is to have Swig as part of your collection. So I'm going to finish now. I'm just going to say, take your time between now and LegionsCon and get it ready. If you can't go to LegionsCon, still get yourself a Swig. Enjoy experimenting, being an alchemist, trying different things, imagining things that shouldn't work but do. And maybe we can adopt some of that Swig attitude, the happy accidents, the things that shouldn't work, let them come together and make the best of it. So I've been Kurr'b. I've enjoyed talking to you about Swig, and I will see you at LegionsCon, Swigs in hand, and we're going to have a real good time making history. So thank you again to Four Horsemen Studios for not taking me down, and to all the support of the Malignancy and the Mythic Legions, Cabal, and Swigs worldwide. Remember, hashtag 1000 Swigs. We'll keep this alive, and we'll see where it takes us. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a great day, and get ready for 1000 Swigs.